Wrestling fans love to imagine matches that never happened. We book fantasy cards in our heads. We argue about it online for hours. But here is the strange thing. Some of those dream matches actually did happen. Just not when they should have. They happened too early, or too late, or in the wrong company, or with the wrong versions of the wrestlers involved. These are 10 matches that wrestling fans would have paid good money to see. And technically, they all took place. But the circumstances were wrong, the timing was off, the magic was not there. We start with two of the biggest names of the 1990s, and we end with the ultimate dream match that everyone wanted but nobody got to see properly. Number 10. Steve Austin versus Randy Savage. Picture this match in 1998. Stone Cold is the hottest act in wrestling. He drinks beer. He flips people off. He stuns everyone who looks at him wrong. The crowd goes crazy every time his glass breaks. Randy Savage is one of the all-time greats. The flying elbow, the raspy voice, the intensity that nobody else could match. Even past his prime, Savage was still Savage, still capable of having a great match with the right opponent. Austin versus Savage for the WWE Championship at a big pay-per-view. That match sells itself. Two larger-than-life personalities. Two guys who could cut promos that made you want to see them fight. The build-up would have been incredible. The match would have been physical and fun. But that match never happened. Not the way it should have. What we got instead was a quarterfinal match in the WCW United States Championship Tournament. The date was May 27, 1995. The show was WCW Saturday Night. The venue was a small television studio in Atlanta. Not exactly WrestleMania. Austin was going by a stunning Steve at the time. He had talent. Everyone could see that. He had won tag titles with Brian Pillman. He had held the United States Championship before, but WCW did not see him as a main event guy. Hulk Hogan had arrived the year before. The spotlight was on the older stars now. Austin was stuck. Savage was Savage, a main eventer, a legend. He had jumped from WWE to WCW and was immediately in the title picture. There was no question who was winning this match. The whole thing lasted about 2 minutes. Savage hit the flying elbow. 1, 2, 3. Match over. Austin was eliminated from the tournament. He would be fired from WCW a few months later. Eric Bischoff did not think he was marketable. One of the worst decisions in wrestling history. Austin went to ECW. He found his voice there. He became Stone Cold. He went to WWE and became the biggest star in the world. By the time Austin was main eventing WrestleMania, Savage was winding down his career in WCW. The window for their dream match had closed. 2 minutes in a television studio. That is all we got. Two of the greatest ever. One forgettable match that meant nothing. The careers of these two men tell you everything about how wrestling works. Sometimes it is about timing. Sometimes it is about being in the right place. Sometimes the best wrestler does not win. The guy with the best opportunity does. Savage had his opportunity in 1985 when he jumped to WWE. He won the Intercontinental Championship. He won the WWE Championship. He main evented WrestleMania. He was one of the biggest stars of the golden era. By the time he got to WCW, he was already made, already a legend. The company paid him like one. Austin had to create his own opportunity. WCW did not want him. ECW gave him a platform to talk. WWE gave him a chance to wrestle. He turned that chance into the most successful run of the late 1990s. Nobody was bigger than Stone Cold from 1997 to 2001. Nobody even came close. And what would have happened if they met in 1998? Austin was defending the WWE Championship against everyone. The Rock, Mankind, Undertaker, Kane. He had classics with all of them. Savage could have been part of that rotation. The promos would have been incredible. The match would have been physical and intense. But Savage was in WCW, stuck in the New World Order storyline that had gone on too long, playing second fiddle to Hogan and Nash and Hall. His best days were behind him, even though he could still go in the ring. The universe where Austin and Savage have a proper feud does not exist. We only have this universe, where their one match was 2 minutes of nothing in 1995, where the dream match remained a dream forever. Number 9. Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan. This one hurts. Two of the biggest names ever. Two guys who defined their eras. And they never had a proper match when it would have mattered. The story goes like this. In 1993, Bret Hart was the WWE champion. He had beaten Ric Flair for the title. He was the new face of the company, the next guy up after the Hogan era. Hogan was still around. He came back to WWE for one more run. The plan was for Hogan to face Bret at SummerSlam 1993. Champion versus legend. The passing of the torch. Bret would beat Hogan clean in the middle of the ring. The new era would officially begin. But Hogan did not want to do it. He did not want to lose to Bret. Not in a big match. Not where people would remember it. So the plans changed. Hogan dropped the title to Yokozuna at King of the Ring instead. He left WWE and went to WCW. The dream match was dead. Bret has talked about this for years. He is still bitter about it. And who can blame him? That match would have been huge. That match would have made Bret a bigger star than he already was. But here is the thing. They had actually wrestled before. Way back in 1979. Georgia Championship Wrestling. Bret was just a kid learning the business. Hogan was going by the name Sterling Golden. Neither one was famous yet. Hogan beat Bret in those early matches. House shows in Augusta and other Georgia towns. Nobody cared. Nobody remembered. It was just two young guys getting experience. Almost 20 years later, they finally faced each other again. WCW had both of them now. Bret had left WWE after the Montreal Screwjob. Hogan was the leader of the New World Order. They could finally have their big match. WCW gave it away on a random episode of Nitro. No build-up, no story, just a match that happened to be on television that week. The match itself was not good. Too much interference. A messy finish where Bret turned heel. Nothing that anyone would want to watch twice. That was it. The entire Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan rivalry. A couple of house shows in 1979 when nobody knew who they were. One bad match on Nitro in 1998 when nobody cared anymore. The biggest dream match of the early 1990s. Completely wasted. Bret wrote about this extensively in his autobiography. He felt cheated. He felt like Hogan robbed him of a defining moment, the match that would have elevated him from star to superstar. The match that would have proved once and for all that the Bret Hart era had arrived. Hogan had the power to make that match happen. He chose not to. He chose to protect himself instead. To leave rather than lose. That was always the knock on Hogan. Great at the politics. Great at protecting his spot. Not so great at putting the next generation over. In WCW, Hogan did the same thing. He beat everyone. Ric Flair, Sting, Randy Savage. The few losses he had came with asterisks and rematches. By the time Bret arrived, the company was already in decline. The New World Order had gone on too long. The creative direction was a mess. Their Nitro match was a product of that environment. No planning, no build-up, just put them together and see what happens. What happened was a bad match that pleased nobody. Not the fans, not the wrestlers, not the people watching at home. Bret deserved better. He was one of the greatest technical wrestlers ever. His matches were clinics. His storytelling was perfect. A proper feud with Hogan would have showcased everything he could do. Instead, he got a throwaway match on free television that nobody remembers fondly. The SummerSlam 1993 match that never happened remains one of wrestling's great mysteries. What would it have looked like? Who would have won? How would it have changed both careers? We will never know. Hogan made sure of that when he walked away. Number 8. Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan. This was supposed to be the biggest match in wrestling history. The Nature Boy versus the Hulkster. NWA versus WWE. The Stylin' and Profilin' champion versus the All-American superhero. Two different worlds finally colliding. Throughout the 1980s, Flair and Hogan ruled their respective companies. Flair was the NWA World Champion. He traveled the territories. He had classic matches with Dusty Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, and Harley Race. He was considered the best worker in the business, the man who could have a great match with anyone. Hogan was the face of Vince McMahon's WWE. He slammed Andre the Giant. He headlined WrestleMania after WrestleMania. He was the biggest star in wrestling, maybe the biggest star in entertainment. Every kid in America wanted to be Hulk Hogan. The match everyone wanted was Flair versus Hogan at WrestleMania, the two biggest champions of the decade. One match to determine who was really the best. It would have been the biggest event in wrestling history. In 1991, Flair left WCW after a contract dispute. He showed up in WWE carrying the big gold belt. Bobby Heenan hyped his arrival for weeks. The real world champion was coming, and he had his sights set on Hulk Hogan. The build-up was perfect. Flair cost Hogan the WWE Championship at Survivor Series 1991 when he interfered in Hogan's match against Undertaker. Flair won the vacant title at the Royal Rumble in January 1992. Everything was in place for the WrestleMania showdown. But it never happened. The match was planned for WrestleMania 8. Flair versus Hogan. Champion versus challenger. The dream match finally coming true. Then Hogan backed out. The official story was that Hogan was taking time off because of the steroid scandal that was hitting the news. The real story was more complicated. Politics, egos. Neither man wanted to lose to the other on the biggest stage. WrestleMania 8 happened without the dream match. Hogan faced Sid Justice. Flair defended against Randy Savage. Both were good matches. Neither was the match everyone wanted to see. They did wrestle each other, just not at WrestleMania. They had house show matches throughout late 1991 and early 1992. Their first match was October 23, 1991 in Dayton, Ohio. Good matches, solid work. But house shows do not count the same way. Nobody remembers house shows. The biggest match of the era happened in half-empty arenas with no television cameras. No build-up. No story. Just two legends going through the motions because the company needed something for the fans who bought tickets. By the time WCW finally put them together on pay-per-view, everything had changed. Hogan arrived in WCW in 1994. He beat Flair for the WCW World Championship at Bash at the Beach. Muhammad Ali and Shaquille O'Neal were at ringside. Jimmy Hart and Mr. T were involved. It was a spectacle, but it was not the match it should have been. Both men were in their 40s. The wrestling business had changed. The match was overbooked with interference and run-ins. Flair spent most of the match on defense while Hogan did his usual routine. They wrestled again at Halloween Havoc, 1994. A retirement match in a steel cage with Mr. T as referee. More interference, more chaos, Sherry Martel, masked men, Sting. A finish that made no sense. Flair was forced to retire but came back a few months later anyway. That was the Flair versus Hogan feud. House shows in 1991. Overbooked messes in 1994. Nothing that lived up to what it could have been. Nothing that fans point to as a classic. The match everyone wanted was 1985 Flair versus 1985 Hogan, or 1988, or even 1991. Two men at the peak of their powers. A clean finish with a decisive winner. The kind of match that settles arguments forever. Instead, we got politics. We got egos. We got two men who both wanted to win and neither wanted to lose. The biggest dream match of the era happened in bits and pieces. Never the way it should have. Never when it mattered most. Flair has said that working with Hogan was always difficult. Different styles, different ideas about what a main event should look like. Hogan worked short matches with big moments. Flair worked long matches with technical wrestling. They never found the middle ground. The WrestleMania match that never happened remains one of wrestling's great what-ifs. Would it have been a classic? Would it have disappointed everyone? We will never know. All we have is house show results and overbooked WCW main events. The dream match that happened but never really happened at all. Number 7. Owen Hart versus Jeff Hardy. Owen Hart was special. Anyone who watched him knew it. He was funny, he was athletic. He could have a great match with anyone on the roster. His feud with Bret showed he could work main event programs. His comedy work showed he could do anything. Jeff Hardy became one of the most popular wrestlers of his generation. The high-flying daredevil who would jump off anything. The colorful character that connected with young fans, multiple-time world champion, their careers barely overlapped. When Owen was in his prime, Jeff was a jobber. When Jeff became a star, Owen was gone. They did have one singles match, December 11th, 1995. Raw. Jeff was nobody at the time, just a kid from North Carolina who took bumps for the real wrestlers. The match was supposed to be a squash. Owen wins quick, move on to the next segment. But Owen gave Jeff some offense. He let the kid show what he could do. A few moves here and there before putting him away. It was nothing special. Just a veteran being generous with a young guy. After the match, Owen fed Jeff to yokozuna for a banzai drop. The big man squashed him for good measure. That was the end of it. Jeff Hardy was nobody. Owen Hart was a star. Their paths diverged. 3.5 years later, they crossed paths again. A tag match on Shotgun Saturday Night. The Hardys versus Owen and Jeff Jarrett. By now, the Hardy Boys were starting to get noticed. They were not stars yet, but people were paying attention. A few months after that, Owen was dead. May 23rd, 1999. A stunt gone wrong at a pay-per-view. He fell from the rafters of the arena. He was 34 years old. Jeff Hardy went on to become a main eventer. World champion multiple times. One of the most popular wrestlers of the 2000s. The kind of opponent Owen would have loved to work with. We can imagine what that match would have been. Owen countering Jeff's crazy moves. Jeff catching Owen off guard with his speed. Two creative wrestlers pushing each other to be better. The kind of match that makes you love wrestling. Instead, we have a squash from 1995 and a tag match from 1999. That is the entire history of Owen Hart versus Jeff Hardy, another dream match lost to tragedy. Owen was exactly the kind of opponent Jeff needed. Someone who could keep up with him. Someone who could think 2 moves ahead. Someone who could make his high-risk style look even more impressive by selling it perfectly. Jeff would have been exactly the kind of opponent Owen needed. Someone young and athletic. Someone who could bring out the competitive fire. Someone who could give Owen reasons to bust out moves he had not used in years. The Hardy Boys broke out in late 1999 and 2000. Their matches with Edge and Christian, their ladder matches, their TLC matches. Jeff became a star. Matt became a star. They changed what tag team wrestling could look like. Owen would have loved it. He was a student of the game. He appreciated innovation. He would have watched those matches and thought about ways to counter everything. Ways to use their style against them. Ways to tell new stories. But Owen was gone by then. The accident at Over the Edge, the fall from the rafters, the tragedy that never should have happened. All for a stupid entrance that nobody needed to see. The wrestling business asks a lot from its performers. Long roads, constant bumps, time away from family, but it should never ask for your life. Owen Hart gave his life for a company that kept the show going after he died. That kept wrestling in the same building where his body lay. That asked his wife for permission to continue while she was still in shock. Jeff Hardy went on to have a Hall of Fame career. Multiple world championships, iconic moments, millions of fans. All of it happening in a world where Owen Hart no longer existed. Dream matches require both wrestlers to be around. This one was taken from us before we even knew it was a dream match. Owen was 34. Jeff was just getting started. The timing was finally about to be right. And then it was gone forever. Number 6. Ultimate Warrior versus Andre the Giant. The Ultimate Warrior was the future of wrestling in 1989. Young, explosive, full of energy. The crowds went crazy for him. His entrance alone was worth the price of admission. Running to the ring, shaking the ropes, the music blasting. He was everything WWE wanted their next big star to be. Andre the Giant was the past. The 8th wonder of the world. The man who had Maine evented the biggest show in wrestling history against Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3. But by 1989, Andre was breaking down. His body could not do what it used to do. The effects of his condition were catching up with him. Every match was a struggle. In a different time, This could have been an incredible feud. The unstoppable young star versus the legendary giant. Two different eras colliding. The new generation proving itself against the old guard. What we got instead was a series of house show squashes and one televised match that is remembered as one of the worst of the year. Throughout 1989, Warrior and Andre faced each other at house shows across the country. The matches were short. Very short. Usually under a minute, sometimes under 30 seconds. Warrior would run in, hit Andre with everything he had, pin him, move on. Andre hated working with Warrior. Everyone who was there says so. Andre thought Warrior had not paid his dues, had not earned his spot, did not appreciate what he had. Andre was old school. He believed in respecting the business, respecting the veterans. Warrior was not like that. Despite his feelings, Andre did the job every night like a professional. That was who Andre was. He put Warrior over clean, night after night, city after city. The aging legend making the young star look unstoppable. Their one televised match happened on October 28, 1989 at Madison Square Garden. It was also shown on Saturday night's main event 3 days later. The match was for Warrior's Intercontinental Championship. It was bad. Really bad. The Wrestling Observer newsletter voted it the worst match of the year. Andre could barely move. Warrior was limited in what he could do. The match ended in a disqualification when Bobby Heenan interfered. Nobody looked good. The thing is, this feud could have been something special 5 years earlier. Andre in 1984 was still mobile, still impressive, still capable of having good matches. Warrior in 1989 was at his peak. Put those versions together and you have something worth watching. Instead, we got broken down Andre losing to young Warrior in matches that lasted seconds. The legend being squashed by the new kid. Again and again and again. There is one lost match that wrestling fans talk about. April 3rd, 1988 in Cesena, Italy. Andre actually pinned Warrior clean. It might be the only time Warrior ever lost a match cleanly in his career. The footage has been mostly lost. Just clips remain. A piece of wrestling history that almost nobody has seen. By 1990, Andre was barely wrestling at all. His last singles match was against Warrior on March 3rd, 1990 in New Orleans. Another loss. Another squash. The end of an era happening in anonymous house shows that nobody remembers. A few months later, Warrior beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6 for the WWE Championship, the title versus title match. The biggest moment of his career. He had arrived. He was the guy now. Andre was done. He made a few more appearances, helped some baby faces, did some tag matches overseas. But his singles career was over. The giant had fallen. The Warrior had risen. The dream match version of this would have been different. Prime Andre versus Prime Warrior. The spectacle of the entrance against the spectacle of the giant. A match that meant something. A match with build-up and story and drama. Instead, we got what happens when careers do not line up. An old legend losing quick matches to a young star. Squash after squash after squash. The worst match of 1989 on national television. A feud that was more about putting someone over than creating something memorable. Andre died in 1993. Warrior remained a controversial figure until his death in 2014. Their paths crossed at exactly the wrong time. When one was fading and the other was just beginning. Another dream match that technically happened but never lived up to what it could have been. Number 5. Chris Jericho versus Mick Foley. Chris Jericho is one of the most successful wrestlers in history. Multiple world championships, constant reinvention, still going strong after 30+ years in the business. Mick Foley is a legend, the hardcore icon, the guy who would do anything for a reaction. Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love, 3 characters that all worked because Foley committed completely to each one. They met once. In ECW, 1996, a show called Big Ass Extreme Bash. Jericho was young. He had impressed in Mexico and Japan. Paul Heyman brought him to ECW to give him exposure in America. Foley was Cactus Jack, The hardcore legend, already established, already respected, one of the best in the world at that style of wrestling. The match was decent, nothing special. Jericho was still figuring things out. He had talent, but had not put it all together yet. A few years in WCW would polish him into the performer who debuted in WWE with that amazing countdown. Imagine this match in 1999 instead. Jericho has just arrived in WWE. The countdown. The interruption of The Rock. Y2J is born. He is one of the best talkers in the company. Sharp, funny, able to get under anyone's skin. Foley is mankind. He has main evented pay-per-views. He has won the WWE Championship. He is beloved by the fans. The lovable loser who keeps finding ways to win. A feud between those two would have been gold. The promos alone would be worth watching. Jericho mocking Foley. Foley playing the underdog. Building to a match where anything could happen. That feud never took place. Foley retired from full-time wrestling soon after. His body could not take it anymore. Jericho moved on to other opponents. Their paths never crossed again in any meaningful way. They did have a moment at Foley's Hall of Fame induction. Jericho laid down and let Foley pin him. A joke callback to their ECW days. A reminder that they once shared a ring. A hint at what could have been if the timing had been different. Number 4. Shawn Michaels versus Rob Van Dam. The showstopper versus the whole show. Mr. WrestleMania versus Mr. Monday Night. Two of the most athletic wrestlers ever. Two guys who made the impossible look easy. Wrestling fans dreamed about this match in the late 1990s. Michaels was on top of WWE when he was healthy. Van Dam was tearing it up in ECW, the match everyone wanted to see. By the time they were in the same company, things had changed. Michaels had been out for 4 years with a back injury. Van Dam had finally made it to WWE. The match could happen. It did happen. Late 2002. An episode of Raw, 9 minutes. Triple H interfered. Disqualification finish. That was it. The match was fine, good even. But it was not what it could have been. Michaels was only 3 matches into his comeback. He was still shaking off the rust. He was not yet the Shawn Michaels who would have classic after classic in the years to come. Van Dam was in a weird spot. WWE never seemed to fully commit to pushing him. He was popular with fans. He could have great matches. But he was stuck in the mid-card most of the time. His one world title run was brief and ended badly. A few years later, this match would have been different. By 2005 or 2006, Michaels was having the best matches of his career. His bouts with Kurt Angle, his matches with Undertaker. He was operating at a level few have ever reached. If they had built to a proper program then, with real stakes and a real story, the match could have been a classic. Two high flyers at the peak of their powers, trading moves that nobody else could do, building to a finish that made people stand up and cheer. Instead, we have 9 minutes on Raw, with a bad finish, and nothing that came after. Another dream match that happened but did not really happen. Number 3. William Regal versus Samoa Joe. And this is a match for people who like their wrestling stiff. Two guys who hit hard. Two guys who can actually hurt you if they want to. Technical wrestling mixed with brutal strikes. William Regal was a master. His British style was different from anything else in American wrestling. He could make any move look painful. He could stretch you for real. He wrestled for WWE for over 20 years. Never quite a main eventer, but always respected by everyone who knew the business. Samoa Joe was a killer. His strikes looked real because they were real. His submissions were nasty. He became a legend in TNA. Classic matches with AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. The face of that company for years. In their primes, this match would have been incredible. Probably mid-2000s. Regal still able to go. Joe at his absolute best. A match with no wasted motion. Every strike means something. Every hold has a purpose. They were never in the same major company at the same time. Regal was WWE. Joe was TNA. Different worlds. Different rosters. The dream match could not happen. Except it did happen. Once. October 2000. a small promotion in California called UPW. It was like an unofficial developmental territory for WWE. That is where they found John Cena. Regal was doing a favor, a veteran stopping by a small show. Joe was a rookie, barely into his career, about 100 pounds lighter than he would become, wearing an ill-fitting singlet, still figuring out who Samoa Joe was supposed to be. Regal won the match. It was nothing special. How could it be? Joe did not know what he was doing yet. He had not developed the style that would make him famous. And then Triple H ran in and attacked Regal, then beat up a couple of nobodies. Even on small indie shows, apparently, Triple H has to get his stuff in. That is the only meeting between William Regal and Samoa Joe, a veteran versus a rookie, in a small building in California, with a run-in that made no sense. The dream match that happened 20 years before it should have. Number 2. Sting versus Kane. Sting was the face of WCW for over a decade. The colorful hero who became the Dark Vigilante. The man who watched from the rafters. One of the most iconic characters in wrestling history. Kane is one of the most successful gimmicks ever created. The Masked Monster. The Big Red Machine. The brother of Undertaker. Glenn Jacobs took a character that could have been silly and made it work for over 20 years. These two never faced each other properly. Different companies for most of their careers. By the time Sting finally came to WWE in 2014, Kane was mostly doing authority figure stuff. Wearing suits, not being the monster. They did share a ring once. Not as Sting and Kane, but as Sting and Bruiser Mastino. March 1993, WCW Saturday Night, taped in Macon, Georgia. Sting was the biggest star in the company, the guy everyone came to see. Glenn Jacobs was a nobody, a big guy trying to get noticed. Wrestling under a name that meant nothing, the match was quick. Sting won easily. Jacobs was green as grass. He did not know what he was doing yet. He was years away from becoming Kane, years away from finding the character that would make him famous. Jacobs went through some rough times after that. He became Isaac Yankem in WWE, an evil dentist. That did not work. He became Fake Diesel, a knockoff of Kevin Nash. That did not work either. Then came Kane. October 1997, Hell in a Cell. Tore the door off the cage, tombstoned his brother. The character clicked immediately. Kane became a main eventer, a multiple-time world champion, a future Hall of Famer. Sting transformed too. The colorful hero became Crow Sting in 1996. Black and white face paint, trench coat, baseball bat. Watching from the rafters without saying a word. One of the best character transformations ever. Those two characters facing each other would have been money. Two creatures of the night. Two supernatural forces. The promos would have been intense. The match would have been physical. The visual alone would have been worth the price of admission. Instead, we have March 1993. Sting squashing a guy named Bruiser Mastino. A match that meant nothing. That led to nothing. That nobody remembers except wrestling historians who look up old results. The dream match that almost happened. Two legends who crossed paths too early, before they became the characters we remember. Number 1. The Undertaker versus Sting. This is it, the big one. The match that every wrestling fan wanted to see for 20 years. The match that never happened. The match that could have main evented WrestleMania. The Undertaker was the heart of WWE for 3 decades. The Deadman. The Phenom. The undefeated streak at WrestleMania. Nobody else has had a character that worked at the highest level for that long. Nobody. Sting was the heart of WCW, the franchise, the icon. When Sting finally came to WWE in 2014, fans immediately started chanting for the match. Undertaker versus Sting. Make it happen before it is too late. WWE did not make it happen. Sting faced Triple H at WrestleMania 31. He lost. Sting faced Seth Rollins for the WWE Championship. He lost. His neck was injured in that match. His in-ring career was essentially over. Undertaker kept wrestling a few more years, part-time, once or twice a year. But by then, both men were broken down. The match would not have been what anyone wanted. Two old men moving slowly, a sad reminder of what they used to be. The match everyone wanted was 1997 Undertaker versus 1997 Sting, or 2002 versions of both. Two men in their primes. Two characters at the peak of their powers. A match with real stakes and real drama. That match exists only in our imagination. It never happened. Not the way it should have. But technically, Sting and The Undertaker did wrestle each other. Once. September 1st, 1990. A WCW house show in Greensboro, North Carolina. The main event. For the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Sting was the champion, the golden boy, the future of WCW. He had won the title from Ric Flair at the Great American Bash that summer. He was on top of the world. His opponent was Mean Mark Callis, a big man managed by Teddy Long. He had potential but had not figured out his character yet. WCW was not going to renew his contract. This was one of his last matches for the company. Sting won. Of course he did. Mean Mark was on his way out. There was no reason to have him beat the champion. It was just a house show. Just a main event to send the fans home happy. 2 months later, Mean Mark Callis was gone. He showed up in WWE at Survivor Series. He had a new look, a new character, a new name, The Undertaker. The rest is history. 30 years of WrestleMania moments, multiple world championships, the streak, the legacy. One of the greatest characters in wrestling history was born that night in November 1990. Sting kept being Sting. More championships, the Crow character, the New World Order feud, 20 more years of being the face of WCW and then TNA. Another all-time great career. And their only match was that house show in Greensboro, September 1st, 1990. No television, no recording that anyone has ever seen. Just a match result in the record books. Sting defeated Mean Mark Callis. NWA World Heavyweight Championship retained. The ultimate dream match happened before either man became who they would become. Before the characters. Before the legends. Before anyone knew these two would spend the next 30 years being the most important wrestlers in their respective companies. One house show. One match. One entry in a results archive somewhere. That is the story of Undertaker versus Sting. The match everyone wanted. The match that technically happened. The match that never really happened at all. Both men talked about wanting this match. In interviews over the years, they both expressed interest. Undertaker said he would have done it if the circumstances were right. Sting said he pushed for it when he finally joined WWE. Everyone wanted it to happen, but circumstances were never right. When Sting was healthy, Undertaker was not. When Undertaker was ready, Sting got hurt. The window kept closing before anyone could climb through it. WWE could have made it happen at WrestleMania 31. Sting was there. Undertaker was there. The match made sense. Instead, they put Sting against Triple H, a match nobody asked for. A match that made Sting look like a loser representing WCW in a war that ended 15 years earlier. Undertaker faced Bray Wyatt that year. A good match with a young star. But not the match the fans wanted. Not the match that would have made WrestleMania truly special. The company went another direction. The dream match died. Some people say the match would have been disappointing anyway. Two old men, moving slow, unable to do what they used to do. Maybe they are right. Maybe the match in our heads is better than any match they could have had in the ring. But we will never know for sure. We will never see Undertaker sit up while Sting drops from the rafters. We will never see their entrances back to back. The Darkness versus the Vigilante. The Dead Man versus the Icon. Two supernatural forces finally colliding. All we have is September 1st, 1990. Greensboro, North Carolina. Sting versus Mean Mark Callis. A house show main event. No cameras, no recording. Just a match that happened and was immediately forgotten. 2 months later, The Undertaker debuted. The character that would define WWE for 3 decades was born. And his only match with Sting was already in the past. Already lost to history. already a dream match that happened before anyone knew it was a dream. That is professional wrestling. The timing matters more than the talent. The circumstances matter more than the desire. Two of the greatest ever. One match that nobody saw, and 30 years of wondering what could have been. Dream matches are called dream matches for a reason. They exist best in our imagination. We picture them perfectly. The perfect build, the perfect story, the perfect match. Reality can never quite live up to that. All 10 of these matches happened. Every single one. But none of them were the matches they should have been. Wrong time. Wrong place. Wrong versions of the wrestlers involved. Austin and Savage had 2 minutes in a studio. Bret and Hogan had a messy brawl on Nitro. Punk and Eddie had indie shows. Owen and Jeff had a squash match. Goldberg and Batista had a DQ finish. Jericho and Foley had an ECW undercard bout. Shawn and RVD had 9 minutes with interference. Regal and Joe had a rookie versus veteran mismatch. Sting and Kane had nothing matches under different names. And Undertaker versus Sting was a house show that nobody saw. That is what happens with dream matches. The timing is never right. The circumstances are never perfect. The match you imagine in your head is always better than the match you would actually get. Wrestling is a business of missed opportunities, careers that peak at different times, companies that do not work together, injuries that happen at the worst moments, decisions that prioritize short-term gains over long-term memories. The dream matches we got in this list all technically happened, but they did not really happen. Not in any way that matters, not in any way that satisfies the desire to see two great wrestlers at their best. Maybe that is okay. Maybe the dream is more powerful than the reality. Maybe wondering what could have been is more fun than watching two broken-down legends struggle through a match they should have had 20 years earlier. That is what being a wrestling fan means. Hoping for the impossible, dreaming about the perfect match, and knowing that the dream is usually better than the reality. Like and subscribe for more 90s wrestling documentaries. Until next time.